Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. I am thrilled to be joined by Bill Bartlett, who is the author of the Sales Coaches Playbook, Cracking the Performance Code, because we know that to achieve their potential, salespeople need a skilled coach to guide their growth. And that's exactly what Bill talks about. Bill is the Executive Vice President of Franchise at Sandler and joins us here on the program. Bill, thanks for joining us on Get Down to Business.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I know you say in your book that the coach's job is to help through blind spots and performance so you can break free of beliefs and behavior patterns that are holding back higher performance. So I guess what inspired you to write the Sales Coaches Playbook when there are so many other books that have already been written on this topic of sales and sales coaching?
Yeah, I have always had a coach in sports or in business as I was growing up. And, about 27 years ago, I started a professional development business with Sandler. And here's what I found. I found that training wasn't enough to drive change. And so I went back to the roots of sports and really started to break down what are those elements other than skill that people worked with me on. And what I found is classroom learning got people stuck. They would learn things, and when they would go out to do it, they would have questions and not be able to get them answered. And so what I learned over time, training impacts knowledge, coaching develops wisdom. And so again, that wisdom is something that I found was lacking out there. The knowledge was there. There's a lot of great training on coaching from a knowledge standpoint, but the wisdom of application was missing.
Definitely. So your playbook, I don't even want to call it a regular book. It's really a playbook, and it teaches 5 critical elements to demystifying the coaching session. So you've already just highlighted, Bill, the importance of coaching, but I don't want to give away all the secrets, but what are some of those 5 key things that you want our listeners to know about and hopefully pick up when they buy a copy of the book, The Sales Coaches Playbook?
Well, one of them is that coaching is a process, not an event. And many times people go to someone for coaching and it's a one-time event. They're hoping that the magic fairy dust is sprinkled on them and they all of a sudden become different, right? Or they change their ways. And it doesn't work that way. What we know about human beings is it takes time for us to change. We all resist change in one form or another. So that's a key. And so that's one of them. Second, the concept of skills, knowledge, and application. All our lives we learn new skills. And many times we know what to do with those skills, but here's what happens. We don't apply them consistently. And so skills and knowledge without application is kind of on deaf ears. 20-60-20 is another one that is a key precept in the book. And that is 20% of people consider themselves high performers, 60% variable performers, and 20% are low performers. And here's what separates each of those groups: the choices that you're willing to make. The top 20%ers, or winners as we call them, really make choices that others won't. And in those choices, they craft their spine, they steal their nature. And the last point, and then I'll turn it back to you, is the performance code is really based on behavior, attitude, and technique. Everybody should know the top 10 behaviors that they have to do in their job to be successful. Everybody should check their beliefs every day to make sure their beliefs support their behavior. And lastly, make sure that your skills are continuously sharp. So sharpen the sword every day.
Yeah, definitely. I'm learning so much already in this conversation. I'm chatting with Bill Bartlett, Executive Vice President of Franchise at Sandler. I know, Bill, you're an acclaimed coach, facilitator, and you've excelled at identifying core challenges and implementing growth strategies that are transformative in depth. And that's why this is a fantastic read, The Sales Coaches Playbook. So, Bill, it's fascinating, especially as I've looked at a little bit of your career. You talked about your own sort of passion and that and need that you've identified in that world of coaching. But what was that aha moment for you when you realized, hey, these are the areas that people need to learn, whether they are a first timer in the world of sales or they've been doing this for decades like you have?
15 years ago, I can remember being with clients and asking them, what is it that you have to do to drive success? And they would talk about training, and I would say, sure, we all need training, but what are those things that you're going to grade yourself on that say, if I'm a 10-level player in these behaviors, you will be successful? And most of them could name 3. And so at that point, for salespeople and sales leaders, here's what I came up with. the top 10 behaviors that every salesperson needs to grade themselves on a 10 high, 1 low scale. And the first is lead generation and business development. Are they good at developing leads? Because without leads, you're sitting around empty rooms. Building relationships. We know the importance of building relationships and how critical that is in our growth. Qualifying opportunities so that we find out that everybody isn't qualified to do business with us. Making presentations and raising our closing rate. Servicing customers, account management, territory development. Having a defined behavior plan where all of these 10 are implemented on a weekly basis. Continuous education. I was shocked to find that most salespeople don't believe in continuous education. And lastly, being driven by methodology, whether it's sales or leadership, but making sure you're not living in a wing it world. Those are the things that really came to me 15 years ago.
And now the great thing is that you're sharing them, as we said, with both new sales managers as well as seasoned professionals in the second edition of the Sales Coaches Playbook, where I know our listeners will learn insights and processes that can help to accelerate their learning curve as a manager and extend the productive life cycle of best performers and help teams achieve at a measurably higher level. So we're going to have to squeeze in a quick break in a moment or so. And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with the man, the myth, the legend, Bill Bartlett, Executive Vice President of Franchise at Sandler and the author of the Sales Coaches Playbook. But in the meantime, I encourage all of our listeners to check out our sponsors, Tom Mirabali from healthplanchicago.com, healthplanchicago.com for all of your health insurance and affordable care act needs. You can also give them a call for a free consultation, 630-863-3477, 630-863-3477. You're listening to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship, and we'll be right back. You are listening to the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Check us out on your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe, rate, review, and share. Just search for Get Down to Business. And again, make sure you leave that review. It makes it easier for business colleagues to find out about the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. So I'm returning with Bill Bartlett, Executive Vice President of Franchise at Sandler and the author of the Sales Coaches Playbook, Cracking the Performance Code, which is indeed what I know every single person tuning in to Get Down to Business wants to do. Bill, you've already shared some of those 5 critical elements. But if you're comfortable sharing, I'd love to learn about a success story, somebody that you know that has followed this process, that it's been able to work wonders for them.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story. A client of mine for a long time, a sales leader who was at the top of his game, having the best career that you could have as a sales leader, hitting numbers, growing people, and something terrible happened. His son died of an overdose of heroin. And all of a sudden, his belief in himself, his belief in what he was doing was dinged because he felt he was a bad father. And so that dinging carried over into his business. And pretty soon he went into a shell and lost some of the things that he had as strong beliefs in himself. And so we spent time digging into some self-limiting beliefs and the negative self-talk associated with that. And obviously he went to therapy too, but the things that we worked on were the separation of the fact that he was a good father, but things happen in life. And the bottom line is they were having a terrible impact on his performance. And so, over the period of time we worked on, all of a sudden he began to build his confidence back and, became the leader that he was before.
Well, Bill, I appreciate you sharing that story, and that's inspiring. So what I always love to leave our listeners with is a homework assignment, something that they can do to put into action. It's especially relevant as we have this conversation at the end of January, the beginning of the year. Maybe New Year's resolutions are still appropriate. And I know our listeners are nodding their heads vigorously listening to this conversation, but what would you recommend that they put into action today, this week, this month?
In my book, I talk about the rule of 3 and 2. And the rule of 3 and 2 is simply this. Every day of your life, you should be working on 3 professional goals. Those goals are designed to make you better at the job or position you have, the career you have. And then 2 personal goals. The 2 personal goals are designed to keep your belief in yourself strong as you go forward. And so that rule of 3 and 2 says you're working on 2 ends of the issue, the business end of it and the personal end of it. And what we find too many times, most people don't work on themselves. They spend 15-hour days working on their business to try to get better, yet they neglect themselves. And so that's one of those things that whenever I say it, There are a bunch of people that go out there and do it right away, and others kind of drag their feet because most people aren't goal setters. But I would highly recommend early in the year, give that a shot. 3 professional goals every day and 2 personal goals. And then at the end of the day, do a historical review as to how you worked in both areas.
I love it. And perhaps the only remaining homework assignment that we could give to our listeners is to get a copy of your book. Bill, how can we do that, and how can we get in touch with you?
Well, a couple of ways. When I'm on LinkedIn, I'm all over LinkedIn, and there's a lot of content that I place on LinkedIn every day. So please reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn. My book is available on Amazon. The new 2nd edition is just out, as well as on the Sandler website at the Sandler shop. So there are a couple of places you can get it, and I'd love to hear some feedback once you do buy it.
Well, I know it's a great read, and I know it will dramatically impact, as we said, both for new sales managers as well as seasoned professionals. And it's the revised 2nd edition of the Sales Coaches Playbook, written by our guest, Bill Bartlett, Executive Vice President of Franchise at Sandler. Just search for it, and you'll find the book. And definitely, again, make sure you get in touch with Bill, and make sure you get in touch with me on my website, shalomklein.com. Would love to hear what you thought of this week's show. We've had some great guests on the program. Certainly, we've chatted with Janelle Barlow, Imelda Rodriguez, Bill Bartlett, and Miriam Melma. A great conversation all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. As I said, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, and share on your favorite podcast app. Get in touch with me on my website, shalomklein.com. Check out our sponsors, Tom Arabali at healthplanchicago.com. But that's a wrap for us here on the show, all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We'll be back next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560, The Answer. Until then, to success, let's get down to business.